Wanjiku Kairu in the Jazz Institute of Chicago office on the fifth floor of Chicago's iconic Fine Arts Building on Michigan Avenue. This is also where Jazz Institute hosts its program Front Row, which is a series of intimate live recordings, concerts, and master classes. Find out more at jazzinchicago.org/front row. I am here today with Jason Adasiewicz performing at 6 p.m. on Thursday, August 29th at Preston Bradley Hall in the Chicago Cultural Center. Hello, Jason. How are you?
Hello.
So happy to have you here today.
Likewise.
Yeah, we're excited to see you play. So we just have a few questions for you before you get up on that stage. Now, you started playing music in the indie rock scene, if I recall correctly. What led you to jazz?
Well, I guess it was more like what led me to indie rock. I started on the drums when I was in high school, and then that led me to university, to DePaul University. I spent about 3 years there and then dropped out and kind of stumbled upon a band in town that just started to tour, and I never did anything like that. Nor was I really familiar with the scene, kind of stuck in the university scene. So that's kind of how I stumbled upon that. The band's name was Pine Top 7, and they were kind of riding the alt country wave that was happening around that time, with bands like Sunvolt and Wilco. So yeah, that's to answer that question. That's how I got involved in that. And then getting my foot in the scene in Chicago, I mean, there were so many things that overlap. And then that's how I sort of gravitated back to trying to lead my own groups. And my own groups always centered around jazz. I wasn't a songwriter in terms of like singing and, you know, within the, you know, indie rock style or any sort of songwriting style. Things that I was doing was always revolving around the language of jazz. And then, yeah, I mean, the scenes were intertwined. I mean, there was a huge scene at the Bottle at the time that was run by Ken Vandermark and John Corbett. And then those were also the same venues that indie rock bands were playing too.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So your first original film score for Roy's World, Barry Gifford's Story, came out in 2017. And I just wanted to know, how is scoring a film different from building a set for a live performance, for example?
Yeah, that was kind of wild because that was a film on this fantastic writer, Barry Gifford. I think folks can kind of make they can sort of so the easiest way is he's best known for Wild at Heart, which is a short story that he wrote and then David Lynch adapted to a film. But he's been writing short stories for decades, lived in Chicago for the beginning of like 19 years of his life or so, maybe a little less than that. But anyways, that movie was interesting because the music came first. So I don't know. I mean, I to answer the question, there was no difference. I mean, I basically made a record, and then the director and of the film, Rob Christopher, basically cut up the music and then put it into the film the way that he wanted to. I was involved in a bunch of films before that. With this great player, Josh Abrams. And that was more like writing, like he would write for cues and you would record things and then they would be sent to the director and the director would have comments and there would be modifications. So my only involvement in writing for a film, I never experienced that as a composer. So I basically just wrote a record. And then that came out as a record last year. On this
great
label in Chicago called Corbett versus Dempsey.
Oh, okay, great. We'll have to check that out. That's very cool. So who are some musicians that you have gained inspiration from over the years?
Wow, I mean, for sure, Chicago has always been a huge inspiration for me.
Hmm.
A lot of the folks that I started playing out with, folks like Mike Reed and Josh Berman, and then idols at the time that I got to play with later on, folks like Rob Mazurek and Ken Vandermark and Nicole Mitchell, and then folks that I was able to play with overseas in Europe. This fantastic German saxophonist, Peter Brotzmann, a lot of folks from Amsterdam. Actually, one of them was just in town last night, Michael Moore. So yeah, like does that answer the
Yeah.
question?
Yes,
I
it
guess I
does. It
don't want to
does.
keep going on with the list, but
Yeah, well, it does answer the
I
question.
would say
So,
Chicago is always at the top for me, and I
huh.
hold that very close to my heart.
Well, as a Chicagoan, thank you so much. I find that very sweet. So, who is someone that you haven't collaborated with, but you would just love to? Someone, anybody in the entire sphere of the past and present.
Bjork.
Ooh, ooh, that would be an interesting collaboration. So, who are you going to be performing with on Sunday? Are you performing with the quintet?
No, I'm performing solo. It's a record that I did last year, also for the same label,
Hmm.
Corbett versus Dempsey, which is a label here in Chicago. It's also a fantastic art gallery. I put out my first solo record, and it is the music of Roscoe Mitchell, and it's my interpretations of a lot of his older music. Um,
Hmm.
the project came around last year when Roscoe he had his first solo art exhibition at the gallery Corbett versus Dempsey,
Yeah.
and the curator John Corbett approached me to present a gift to Roscoe after the opening. There was a party at the Hungry Brain, and the gift was me playing for about 15 minutes and playing old music of his that he wrote
Hmm.
in the 60s and 70s, a lot of stuff for the art ensemble, the early art ensemble years. And it was basically, yeah, like I said, it was a gift for him.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise. There was a party. My instrument was on stage. There was a like a blanket over it, and then halfway into the party, the instrument was exposed, and I went up there and performed.
Hmm.
I've played with Roscoe a few times, but I've never
Yeah.
performed for someone. And I mean, when playing with your heroes, I've discovered is a lot different than playing for your heroes.
Really?
So
Oh, yeah.
I was incredibly nervous, but his reception was so warm that then it turned into an even longer project. What started as a 15-minute, set ended up
Hmm.
being hours long, and then became a record, which came out last year. I was able to present it at the Hyde Park Jazz Festival last year, and
Hmm.
now I'm able to present it at the Chicago Jazz Fest, playing solo for the first time at the festival and opening up for another hero of mine, Amina. So
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Well, you may be playing solo, but you won't be alone. We'll all be in the audience, very excited to hear what you have to play for us. So, do you have any shows or anything that you'd like to promote coming up?
yeah, I mean, obviously this show, but I guess that's the point
Yes.
of this video and the point of what you're doing. So check. There are some shows in September with this fantastic saxophonist Dave Rempis. He's doing a residency at a bar called the Hungry Brain on the north side, and I'm gonna look up because I see where the dates are. So he's there every Thursday in September, and then I'll be joining him uh, there on the 12th of September and the 26th of December. So, September.
Okay,
Oh my
great.
gosh, September.
Of September. Yes, of September. Don't worry, we'll remember. It's next month coming up. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today. Again, this has been Jason Adasiewicz performing at 6 p.m. on Thursday, August 29th at the Preston Bradley Hall in the Chicago Cultural Center.